My affiliation with Jamaat was there now because my dad was not Mir, so therefore, we've always had that Jamaat thingy, but I didn't think I had the connection with the Khuddam at that time.
It's just a generation thing for them because the measure of success is different, whereas the younger generations, the measure of success is different because we've experienced so much more than they have in this culture, in this society.
And the fact that we are all part of Khuddam and Ahmadiyya, and we're all serving the Jamaat in some way, shape or form, and we've also got a career, but the forefront of our motive and our aim is to serve the Jamaat, everything else will fall into play. Like if you chase God, the world will chase you.
Right, Assalamu alaikum, welcome to episode 2 of Chit Chat Jai. In this episode, we're going to be talking about mental health. So we have Dr. Hisham, Sabah, and Mo to discuss this topic. Mental health, for me personally, everyone I speak to who talks about mental health, I haven't met a person who says they haven't got any mental health issues. So is it something serious? Is it a real health issue, or is it something that you all deal with and it's part of our nature, right? Is it like a physical health, we need to improve? And why don't we start with Dr. Hash? Why don't you tell us a bit more about what is mental health?
Dr. Hash.
And also
an intro.
also, last week there was no Jai. This week, are you doing something? Are you delivering or what?
Mate, I did a
microwave thing.
Look, we've done a video on chai. We're doing a video on chai. We're showing you how to do chai. There's no chai. I've got a water bowl which is empty.
Alright, cool.
We'll do a chai for the third. Look, the third episode is relationships, so that one we definitely chai, right? So
wow, that's a deep one, Chit.
Yeah. So let's get back into the conversation. Let's talk about.
Alright, Dr. Hash, over to you.
What an intro! Brilliant. Right. So mental health obviously is a wide, huge topic to talk about. And it's obviously a very real thing. It has its own challenges in terms of physical health and physical issues you can often manage and identify and diagnose a bit easier, whereas in mental health there's that whole challenge of what to diagnose. And obviously it varies from things like depression, anxiety, addiction, and each thing has its own scale. Then you've got your proper sort of mental health illnesses that are long term that people suffer with, like schizophrenia, psychosis, these sorts of things, mania. So, and it can occur at any time for many people, and we'll see how the discussion goes. But the most common things that we hear about are depression and anxiety, and probably addiction as well amongst the youth. So it's just a general intro. It's such a huge, vast topic, and hopefully we can expand on it and see where the conversation takes us.
Let me just add to that. I think one big thing to kind of identify is that everyone has mental health. Everyone has mental health. I think the big confusion is if you ask kids especially, the first time I did any sort of workshop within the Jamaat or even outside when I spoke to like just friends, do you have mental health? They're like, no. Actually, even Sabah, do you remember? Our first conversation ever on mental health was like, I asked him, I said, do you have mental health? No. Are you sure? Everyone has mental health. Mental health is basically how we deal with our psychology, our relationships, our well-being, emotional well-being. But the issue is mental health illnesses. When we can't regulate our emotions properly, we can't regulate certain aspects of our mentality properly, then that's when that becomes mental health problems and mental health issues. So just as there is physical health, there is mental health, and every single person has it. That's, I think, very important for everyone to know.
Yeah. So let's go into a bit more. So the challenges of, we mentioned anxiety and depression. Let's go into a bit more in that. So you deal with some of the youth, right? You speak to a lot of youth. Do you find that is it that people have got anxiety, stress? What do you think are you seeing as the most common factors, and what's driving that from your perspective of some of the conversations you've had?
You're asking me? Sorry.
Sabah.
Oh, me? I thought you were asking Dr. Hash.
No, we'll ask you, and then we'll go around. Just.
So do you mean just in our opinion, what do we think is more common? Or?
Well, it's just because you guys are speaking to you guys with the youth, right? Whether it's in the Jamaat.
We were youth.
Yeah, no, you can give personal examples.
I'm still a youth.
You can give personal examples.
30 this year.
I'm saying that one. I'll say that when my back's hurting, by the way.
I think everyone goes through some kind of mental health issue or trauma.
Yeah.
Is that the right word, Doc? Can you see mental health?
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I think It happens to everyone. I think everyone's on the scale of mental health problems. Whether you're really struggling, you're really depressed, severe anxiety, whatever that might be, or then you've got the other end of the spectrum where you're okay, you're getting through life. You might have a blip here and there, but you push through and you're okay. Or you're sat in the middle where sometimes it's really bad, sometimes you're totally fine. And I think it's about trying to identify the issues which you have and finding ways which you can deal with them, whether you're of faith or not of faith, and understanding what you can do to help yourself alleviate some of those mental health conditions or traumas, to help you along the way. I think there's loads of different things. I get messages on my Instagram a lot where people said, "Oh, look, I've got this issue. My father's passed away, or my mother's passed away. I'm struggling to even do my exam properly. I'm struggling to form relationships." For me personally, I feel like a lot of it is people need to talk to someone and just open up and have someone hear what their problems and issues are, and then work with that individual of finding a solution. And I think as MKA, we have a massive responsibility of being there as a shoulder to turn to, because it might be that they can't turn to their parents because they're a different generation, or they might not understand. And even a cultural thing where even our culture, some people, our elders say, "Oh, mental health, what are you talking about? Have a brufen, have some water, yeah, and you'll get over it." And it's true, that's what you say. They disregard mental health. They think, "Oh, it's just something which someone made up." When really, even Hazur said, if it's an issue and it's bad, then get it seen to by the specialists. So even culturally, we have to deal with it as it being an illness. And Hazur is the example for Hazur. And Hazur said it's an issue and it's an illness that we need to
So one of the challenges you mentioned is culture. Then Mo, you mentioned that whilst we were youth, I don't think social media was as big as it is today, right? You've got so many different platforms. You've got now TikTok, you've got Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. I mean, you name it. There's so many out there. Do you think that social media? I mean, how do you navigate? What are the challenges because of social media that's causing this mental health? I know people like Instagram are creating these new functions that help people. They're looking at removing likes and things like that, but still, it's comparing yourself to others. It's everybody puts their best front up. What are your thoughts on that social media, the challenge? And even then, it's authentic relationships, right? People are speaking to people and they're not maybe meeting in real life. And where we are now, we're in COVID, we're in a in pandemic.
Just before we move into that, just going back to Saba's point, I think Saba made a really good point that with a lot of the people that have been messaging him, the main thing that they're looking for is just someone to talk to, and I think that's a really, really big thing within mental health issues. And raising awareness on the problem. I mean, we're all cohabitants. Human beings cannot live without socializing. We have language, we have facial expressions, just the way who we are, we have to live with people. And when people don't have that, it just kind of exacerbates the problem. So everyone kind of needs to have someone to talk to open up to just kind of express any sort of, whether even if it's joy, they want to express joy, but most times obviously grief that they want to express when that can lead to problems. But with regards to social media, it obviously has its benefits and it has its pitfalls. I think generally it's difficult to kind of quantify, but I would say there's more benefits to it than problems. But with the youth especially, I think the problems come when they're trying to kind of figure out who they are. And when they're trying to figure out who they are, they kind of they what's the word, when they make themselves be who they're not, and that's online. They create an online profile.
You mean like fake it till you make it kind of thing, or not fake it till you make it?
No.
It's a persona. It's a persona.
Yes, they create this sort of not superposition, but it's very extravagant online personality that is very different to their like real life personality. And they create this online personality because they see, these socialites on social media that have these millions of followers. They live a certain lifestyle. They've got all these materialistic things, and the younger generation obviously would look up to these people. These people are most likely going to be musicians. They're going to be like possibly football players, or just generally like famous people. And then when they have this sort of social profile, younger people want to attain that. So that they will change who they are online to attain that, but they're not really those people. So there's a massive identity conflict, if that makes sense. That's not who they are in real life. This is who they are on their social media platform. So they'll amend their platform to make it look like they're that way. And when it comes to real life, they just haven't developed the skills, or they haven't like created a real life profile to be able to help them deal with real life issues. They focus so much on their social media aspect, they've forgotten how to be in real life. That's one of the aspects or the issues that I've seen mental health kind of, factor towards social media, factor towards mental health.
Okay.
I think one important thing Mo just mentioned there is that a lot of with regards to social media, a lot of the youth I'm saying youth, but generally people will turn to social media at that sort of age range when they're developing, when they're finding who they are, right? So you're talking about ideally, probably much younger than 16-year-olds. You're talking about 13 to 24-year-olds, right? Where they're heavily involved in social media. They have it exposed to them. And it's interesting because the highest rate of sort of suicide associated with depression is amongst young males within that age range. And I did a little bit of research during medical school on this, looking at sort of numbers, statistics and things. And what we found was that people, amongst men in the UK, so Scotland, England, most of the European countries have the highest rate of suicides amongst young males within this age range. Other factors, we looked at things like religion, where the religious communities and things being part of faith, whether that's a protective factor, and most of the evidence suggests that it is. But you've got these kids who are developing, finding themselves, and they're going through these phases of anxiety, depression, looking up to these models, as Mo said, looking up to like high impact profiles, and then they're trying to aspire to integrate that within their life. Just one thing to mention is that we probably should have said this at the start, but the Promise Society has written as well that the aspect of your physical health, so how you are physically, affects your soul. And in the same way, your mental health, whether you're any illness associated with that or any deterioration or weakness, also affects your soul. So your spirituality, your faith, and your relationship with God is going to be affected in these conditions when you're going through this sort of a thing. So it's something to bear in mind, that it's not something that should be taken lightly or ignored culturally, like you talked about.
So is there a way, because you're on social media as well, right? You're on Instagram and Twitter and the other social medias. So we mentioned that they look up to these models and it's not reality, but then how do people like yourselves, who are young imams, who are trying to connect in a positive light and in a positive image, how do they then portray an image as well that people can connect with, right? How does it work from a different angle, of a positive light?
You know what Mo was talking about, people trying to aspire to be somebody else, trying to be somebody they're not, in terms of stunting for the gram. The question is hold on, why are they doing that? What do they want to achieve? So the questions we need to ask are, those models, millionaires, people who have got millions of followers on Instagram, what is it that people want from them? Or why do they want to be like them? And for me, I could be wrong, it's my opinion. And one is fame, and number two is wealth and materialism. Because when you get these big numbers, then you start moving into the category of sponsorship, you start moving into the world of being invited to different events, your profile builds, you become famous. Right?
Bro, you know what? I think it's not just wealth and materialism. I think it more so is recognition. It's just attention. I think attention is the big thing. I think people just want to feel like
about having fame.
Yeah. So where you mentioned wealth and materialism, I think a bigger one is just to be recognized and to be seen and to be heard. I think that's a big thing.
Shouldn't we be trying to tackle the question of, are these things important, or what are people trying to aspire to be like, and how do we navigate them to what's important rather than what is materialistic and is going to stay here with us on this earth?
See, I would see it completely differently. I wouldn't see that people who go out to who follow, high profiles and things, I don't think that they're looking for something in particular. I think it's more exposure. The more exposure you get in that age. So, for example, as your mind is developing through that age range that we talked about, sort of 13 to 24, all your neurons are getting rewired, your chemistry is being changed. The more any sort of trauma you go through at that age mentally has a longer lasting effect than it would do in an older age or anything like that. So the exposure to the fact that Instagram and social media has just made the world smaller and made you more connected also means that you're more connected with the ills and the bads of society. So in that sense, I don't think people are looking for anything in particular, but the exposure, it's like a cycle. So you're exposed to something, you want it, then you see more, then you're exposed to more.
There's a question of why do people try and be somebody they're not on Instagram? Why do people aspire for these millions of followers? And then in turn of aspiring for that, it affects their mental health of maintaining that profile of being somebody you want. That's what causes a mental health problem.
Yeah.
So the question would be, why is it, what are people chasing, and how is it, why is it benefiting them?
Yeah, do you know what? I do think, bro, this comes into like there's so many factors that come into it. It's mad. Like when you think about, when you actually deep it, it comes into like how you've been raised, what your family dynamics are, relationships within school. All of it comes down to like there's so many different things that kind of factor in to how you behave in life in general. Obviously, we're an amalgamation of our experiences at the end of the day. We are who we are because of what we've experienced, because of what we've gone through. And when people on social media create a profile, you have to look into like, okay, how have they been brought up? Like, what are their family dynamics like? Because I can imagine, and Hisham, maybe you can attest to this as well, is that if a child's been brought up with really bad like family dynamics, they've got a disruptive family, their parents aren't really so supportive, their siblings are all, there may be a single child as well, and that kind of would ultimately mean that they're low in confidence. They don't really have the best communication skills or social skills, and they now have an online profile as well where they're following certain people who obviously have high profile. They've got a lot of wealth. Then they would kind of naturally see that these people are doing these things online. They've got this wealth, and they would want to attain that. And it would all be online because in real life they don't know how to behave. Because of like so many different factors. It could be low confidence, which obviously comes from their family situation or how they've been treated at home or even in school. So there's loads of different things that come into it. But again, it comes down to some of your question that why they want to be like that. And like as I mentioned, it's a loads of different factors. But I think one of the main things it comes down to is that recognition and attention.
Yeah, it's a sense of sorry. Yeah, Carrie, I was just thinking it's a sense of belonging because social media, there's so many different niches now. Like you could just be into one aspect, right? Like you could have a very peculiar interest, and suddenly all your friends become these people. Like photography, for example, you're a photographer, right? And suddenly you get all these followers and people who like you, who are photographers. You get this little crew, and you're in this club, right? And it gives you a bit of a high when another photographer or someone famous likes it. And you create these groups. And for me personally, maybe I'm a bit weird because I'm using Instagram in a different way, but I use it a lot for value and information. Like whether it's investment, finance, business, like there's so much content out there, right? It gives you in snippets, but then maybe I'm just an oddball kind of guy who's just looking at it from that perspective. Maybe other people are looking at it from girls, it might be looking at it.
You know what I was saying before, I honestly think, because naturally as humans, we want attention.
Yeah.
As superficial as it sounds, as egotistical as it might sound, we are human. We do like attention. We like people, it depends who we receive attention from. That's a big thing. Obviously, if you're in a relationship, you'd want your partner to show you attention. You'd want your children to show you attention. It depends who you want to receive attention from. But with some people who don't receive any attention, they would crave that from anyone and everyone. When you go online, it's a lot easier for them to do it, and they don't have the skills to socialize, to converse, to all of those things. That's when I think they can delve into social media so much so that it becomes a problem to their mental health.
So where does it become then that whether it's school or different environments, whether it's at work, people crave attention. Where does it become too much and it becomes a mental health issue where you're constantly on it, right? And you look at your screen time, it's like 10 hours in the day you just spend scrolling on Instagram.
No, I don't think that's sorry. I don't think that's bad.
Yeah, no, what, spending 10 hours or getting attention?
Oh no, I think. Well, talking about the question you asked about spending so long on the screen,
yeah,
does that cause mental health issues? I spend hours on my phone, hands down. Yeah, my life on my phone. But do I feel I've got mental health issues? Well, that's my wife. No, I don't think I have. I personally think I'm all right. Right, I'm not like on the end of the spectrum about to fall off the cliff. That's not me. Yeah, but I'm saying spending a lot of time on your phone, does that mean you've got mental health issues? Personally, no. So that's my answer to your question, unless you've got another question.
I think you got to recognize it. So you got to clarify, because mental health again is so broad. So what are you talking about? You're talking about addiction. You're talking about looking at other people's profiles, giving you anxiety. Getting abuse. Is that leading you to depression? So you got that. I think as soon as you classify it, you start to realize where it becomes a problem. If you're on your phone all the time and reaching for it first thing in the morning, probably not. If you're reaching for it all the time, right, and sort of when you don't need to.
What's wrong? Why did you stop yourself saying that?
First thing in the morning, I turn off my alarms, man. That's it. I was reaching for my phone straight away, so that's why I was
snoozing. I just snoozing.
Yeah. But if you turn off your alarm and immediately open up Instagram, then you know you got a problem, right? First thing in the morning.
However wrong this might sound, people go on their phones the last thing at night and the first thing in the morning. Okay, I fall victim to that. Yeah, I fall victim to that. Right?
I don't think the doctor's approving of it.
It's not about going on your. It was more about the fact that first thing in the. So you're encouraged. So when you go to sleep, before you go to sleep, you should pray. Yeah, think of God. Yeah, when you wake up in the morning, first thing you should do is do a prayer. Think of God. So your mind is all sort of trying to. As a Muslim or as an Ahmadi Muslim, you should be encouraged to sort of go in that aspect. So I suppose that's what I was talking about, where you shouldn't. If you're reaching for it, and the first thought is, let me check my Instagram, then maybe that's becoming a sort of too engrossed in your life. Whereas if you're still able to function and still able to do other things, then maybe it's not a problem. Some people are really good at balancing.
If your phone is a priority and is taking over your life and taking you away from the purpose of your life creation, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I suppose that's where
So that's, we're naturally progressing onto the next area, which is that self-realization. You're talking about if you can self-realize that it's a problem. But you mentioned your wife. Does she have a problem with you being on your phone a lot? Or no?
Well.
No, but in terms of,
episode 4, 5, and 6. No, I actually got a problem with it. No, the thing is that a lot of my work is on social media, so she hasn't got a problem with it.
Yeah.
I think, what it comes down to is, again, it's balance. I can spend a good few hours on my phone as I'm working, got work to do, but then I have to have time to give to my family. And that's really important. And I think it's about understanding between you and your partner, or you and your family. And like you said, self-realization of, hold on, is it taking on my life? Is it taking me away from what's important in life? And I actually think that COVID-19 has had a massive impact on people's mental health and has pushed people to spend more time on their phone because they're bored. Yeah. That's a side note. I don't know how you're going to fit that into the chit chat, but I think it's a fact.
100%. I completely agree with you. And Saba, you'd know as well, I've deactivated my my Instagram. Maybe I think it's been 2 months now. I was
wondering where you went. I was like,
and it's because, bro, I was picking up my phone, I was going on Instagram, I was closing the app, and without even realizing, I was opening the app up again. I literally just had closed it. I'd swiped up and then swiped up again, and then I've opened the same app. Like I just closed.
It was a bit my failure. Like I said, I'm leaving Instagram for a week, and then I went on the next day. So.
Right, you're weak.
I'm weak. No, but the problem with me is I've got this other investment page, and then that one.
Yeah. Excuses. I hear them.
Yeah. but
listen, you got to admit, mate, you got a problem. Dr. Hyde, you got someone to deal with it, Doc.
Yeah. But honestly, so we move from that. I was thinking a big issue in Asian households is depression. That people, if you're going through,
definitely.
do people actually? How do you discuss that with your parents or anybody? Like you're going through that.
I think
Oh,
that's
can I ask you a question? Where does that come from? How do you know people in Asian family?
I've heard stories about this where people are going through,
I
personal
don't think
family.
it's just Asians. I think it's generally
Yeah. Okay. Generally.
in the population, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's
What's
also.
the, no, I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm asking why.
What?
Can I just add a point to that? Yeah?
What? Sorry. Yeah, correct.
It's come back to what Hasham mentioned about the study about young men in particular in Europe have higher suicide rates, and I think this links into the next thing we're going to talk about: why in Asian households. I think when it comes to young men, yeah, where like traditionally we were seen as the guys to kind of hold everything down. We're the ones that have to be the breadwinners. We got to be macho. We got to be masculine. We got to be, we just got to be strong all the time. We got to be healthy, and we've just got to be the G's. Really, we've just got to be like the men. Yeah, we've got to be the men, and there's certain views or certain like certain things that we have to uphold when it comes to that. Traditionally, that's how it was, and I think that kind of that can feed into people's mental health issues when it's hard to attain. If someone's naturally really slim, really skinny, and their family are always on their case, like, why are you so skinny? What's wrong? We put some weight on. That's obviously going to affect them. It will, especially in Asians. If you're too skinny, you're ill. You're unwell. You've got a problem.
You're
People are
unhealthy, and if you're moving to like a 64 waist, boy, you are healthy.
Exactly. So that's, I think, one thing, yeah, that traditionally males have a role that they have to uphold, and then it's a lot harder to do that with the help of social media when men are seen as a certain way, they're meant to look a certain way, similar with women. But moving on to the topic, within Asian households, that view is still there. Whereas if you look at like the more European life, or like even generally now Western lifestyles, this whole thing about metrosexuality, men don't have to be men anymore. You can be a shoe if you want. You don't have to be a man or a woman. You can be whatever you want. Am I lying? The roles.
What do you think?
He's defining the role of a man.
The roles of men and women, males and females, have been diffused so much.
Yeah.
Men don't really know. Men don't really know what men are meant to be. Women don't really know what men are meant to be. Exactly. All of that, I 100% believe that is a massive factor in young men's mental health problem, because naturally, with our hormones, with our neurotransmitters, with how we're biologically built, we need to behave a certain way. We need to think a certain way.
Actually,
but then when society tells us to behave a different way, that we can't do that, we can't be that, then that kind of creates this conflict. And especially within the Asian household, when we're told to be a certain way, but then society is telling us to be in a different way, that also adds to, all the issues that we are kind of building up.
No, here's the question. What society says, right, and what the household expects from you is the same.
No.
Not always.
No, definitely not.
It's not, bro.
Because I think a lot.
One second. Islam teaches that the man is the breadwinner, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in society,
it's
the
not.
man goes.
No, it's not.
What does society tell us? That men aren't supposed to be out in the workforce?
No, if men want to be looking after the kids, they can. The women can go.
No, Saba, traditionally, the man was the working man. The man was the head of the house. Yeah, the man was a breadwinner. Now, if you say that the man, if a man in a typical Western family, say Caucasian, if a man was to say, "Yo, Mister, listen, I'm gonna work. Yeah, we got kids. Do you mind if you look after them?" She'll be like, "What? Are you mad? I want to be the breadwinner." And then he would just have to be like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll be the house husband." Do you understand? So that's what we're saying. Like that, in the last decade or 2 decades, the lines between gender roles have kind of blurred. Like they kind of been diminishing.
Can I get everyone's opinion rapid? What do you agree with that?
What do you mean? Would you agree with that?
Do you agree that both men and women should be able to go out? Because come on, can you rephrase my question, please?
So what? So I can get the stick?
No. I mean,
basically, I think. Go on.
I think I like the flow. Go on.
So, do you think that men can do what women can do, a woman can do what men can do now? Is that basically your point?
That's the question. Yeah. opposed to Dr. Hash, Mo, and Imran D.
I,
on Instagram.
I think, Doctor, you can go first. Let the doctor go first.
That's a really controversial question. No,
Someone's trying to stick it on us, you know.
That's the point. What's your opinion?
look, my opinion is that I don't think so. I think you kind of went off point from where I was going to go to, but I don't think that's relevant. That's relevant to mental health. I don't think so. With the family dynamics, one thing I'll say is that the family dynamics, however you manage them, whether the woman is working, whether the man is working, right? Some people are able to split that sense of childcare and that responsibility that they have for that, and split those roles between themselves. What they do between themselves, from my opinion, is between the husband and wife and between that family unit. However, one thing I want to sort of capitalize on what Mo said is that the mental health issues start from the family. So the family dynamics, or what goes on at home, how your father treats you, how your mother treats you, whether you can't expect a child who's growing in a household where you've got arguments all the time, or even just a small point you mentioned, like you're overweight, right? If you tell a girl you're overweight all the time, she's not going to, she's going to have some degree of mental scarring from that, right? And particularly, it's not just men, like boys are, when you get to a particular age, I can think we can probably relate to what things affect you and how you can go through some areas of depression. But similarly with women, there's this huge expectation, probably more in Asian households. When you reach a certain age, you got to get married and that sort of a thing. You don't think that has a mental sort of an impact on your mental health? So there's a lot of things that happen at home that affect your health, and that's how I'm going to divert from your question, Sabah.
With that, Hasham, it's not just how your parents treat you, but it's also how they treat each other, because kids learn like from not just from what you say, they learn a lot from what you do, and they'll reciprocate your actions. So how your mom treats your dad and how your dad treats your mom can also have a massive impact on your understanding of life as well. Between a couple, and just generally communication, violence, all of that they can pick up from the parents. But also, Hasham, you were saying not just the fact that you have to get married at a certain age. With the Asian culture, there comes so many, there's just these cultural traditions.
A lot of baggage, isn't it?
So much, it's mad, bro. It's but one thing that me and my cousin always spoke about, bro. One of the simple things is this Abdul down the road got 95%. Why did you get 80%? And that when they start comparing you to next brethrens down the road, that obviously adds to your stress and to another, because it's bro, I don't know why Abdul got 95%. I don't even know him. But then when parents speak, and then there's a lot of competition between families within, especially I think, especially with the Asian household, it's parents want their kids to be so successful, and to a certain extent that's a positive thing. But when they start driving their kids to insanity by saying, oh, look at this guy, he got that, when naturally they might just be more talented at that particular subject.
Can I ask a quick question, right? Do you ever, so this is probably this is to everybody, right? Do you ever feel that you went through that, where you went through
100%? 100%.
What about yourself, Sabah?
What, in terms of competition, or
no, in terms of feeling pressure from your parents or within the household? One way, maybe not just your parents, maybe just relatives or something from your culture, maybe even from your Jamaat or your friends.
I think it might have to be two things. Sorry, no. Do your.
The question was to everyone.
You've been scarred, so
bro. Should I tell you why? Because one of the pressures is something that is out of your control, bro. If you're dark skinned, you have to be light skinned. This is bad in the Asian culture. It's called shadism. Bro, what can you do about your skin color? I know family members. 100%. Nah, legit, bro. Legit, yeah. You'll know, and I think everyone in this chat will know, yeah. Shadism in the Asian culture is so bad, to the point where I can't remember what study I was reading.
Their cream's called Fair and Lovely. Their cream.
Exactly. Yeah. Bro. I'm not even gonna, but it's just mad.
Diverted big time. Sorry.
That is a pressure that we have absolutely no control over. We can't control our skin color. Asians, exactly, and that again comes back to social media as well, and media in general. It like perpetuates white people as, you know, the greatest, superior, beautiful, all of that, and then the Asian family, the traditional Asian families, older generation, think that that's the better way to look.
Okay.
You can't even do anything there.
I mean, for me, the pressure was, why can't you be a doctor? Like, why didn't you want to be a doctor? Why?
Yeah, I've got
Yeah, you know, we got a doctor here, so he's the role model.
You know, I'll tell you now. So, because you touched on that, I wasn't even gonna sort of jump on that, but because you touched on that, so I didn't get into medicine first time around, but my A levels were 4 Ds. So
B's, 4 B's or D's?
4 Ds. D's for drama. I don't know anything, but 4
D for
Ds.
dead.
Yeah, dead. Fine, COVID. But the thing is, like, going through that, so for me to get into medicine, personally speaking, right, was such a huge mental struggle. So many times I went. So when you get that score, when you get your teachers telling you, sorry, you can't do it. So I did a degree. I applied after that. I didn't get in. Then I worked for a year and did the most depressing job ever, just to get experience. It was like a healthcare assistant.
Okay.
Can you imagine? I want to be a doctor, and patients are stopping me and saying, "Thank you, nurse." You know, and not that nursing, nothing's wrong with being nurses, right? But mentally, that got me. That day, a patient looked at me and said, "Nurse," right? I was like, "Yo, hold on, this isn't right." Right? So my head was so messed up, right? So I've been through some traumatic stuff, right? But to go through something, but there's a huge expectation, there's a huge sort of pressure, and the only at the end of the day, the only thing that's actually helped me in my times of mental struggle or is my faith and I'm surprised, because contrary to belief, like the promised Messiah, the second caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Muslim, they've written so much stuff that is so important and probably should be widely discussed, like the Way of the Seekers, written by Hazrat Muslim. There's so much stuff in there about mental health, mental support, dealing with addictions, dealing with...
You know, the Holy Quran is flooded with it.
Exactly.
Having that reliance and dependence on God that show you through the memories of God, show you through the memories of God, hearts find peace. That's where obviously in all the domes or the mosques, even the fact that Allah did not burden any soul beyond his capacity. That itself just encompasses the fact that you got the strength and the patience and the ability
Resilience.
to deal with whatever comes your way. The fact that Allah says He doesn't burden you with anything which you can't deal with, right? There's the answer, which means you have got the strength and the patience.
So that goes to the final topic, which is mental resilience, right? How do we get stronger mentally? So you've got the foundation, right? So faith is one. You know, what happens if you're an atheist? So you just basically, you're gone. If you don't believe in a God, can you not have that mental resilience?
You know, speaking about the study I talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
The highest rate of suicides amongst young men, we looked at the factors affecting them, and the highest rate of suicide, you get what I'm saying, were atheists. So faith definitely has a factor in it, but that doesn't mean that, you know, just because you're an atheist or you don't believe.
During COVID, there was a report that came out in Metro that the word prayer in Google has rocketed because people realize that we haven't got the skill anymore to deal with COVID. Like, people were looking for that rope of hope. And I saw it on my Instagram page that my viewers on my lives increased because people were looking for something else than human beings to turn to, a supreme being. And ultimately, they realized that, Allah has the capacity Allah is the only one who we can turn to for help, because people can't help us anymore. We're stuck in the four walls of our homes. Who are we going to turn to? You know what I mean? You're going to go to the park for a stroll. What are you going to do? Who are you going to have a chat with? You're back home then. That's why even as you said, that focus on your prayer, use the time at home to gain more knowledge about your faith. And praying congregation has more blessings. So definitely, for me personally, I feel like being of faith really helps you overcome any mental health conditions that you might have.
How do you strengthen that? Because some days people are like, I don't feel like praying. Maybe.
With a human being, right? You're gonna have good days and bad days. That's the truth, right? One day you might do 4 namaz, one day you might do 3 namaz, one day you might do 5 namaz. right? You're gonna have blips. That's life. But the question is to keep going. And I look at it like this: is that when you're traveling at 40, where you're at 40% of your max, right? And you fall down, and then you get 20%. You realize that, hold on, I was at 40%, and then you try to do better, and then you go up to 60%. Then you're at 60, you keep going, you fall again to 40. And I think it's just knowing that when you come back stronger, and never to give up. Allah likes those people who try and ask Him for help. Ultimately, Allah said, if you walk to me, I'll run to you. And put a hand out my arm out. So it's just about knowing that Allah is always there, and that you are loved, and that you will have that strength if you ask for it. Sometimes Allah is not going to help you if you ask Him for help. That's like a given.
Okay, so
it's
how
just
can
about
no,
being
makes,
steady.
and Mo, what do you think in terms of Khudam Lamadiyya? How can Khudam Lamadiyya actually help people in this? Like, what more can we do as a?
I think, you know what, there's Qadam Ahmadiyya does a lot, and I think it goes over our head sometimes, and especially the Qadam that are involved in MKA, they actually don't even see the underlying benefits of MKA. I'll give you an example. MKA does a lot of charity work. Yeah, we all know that we've all been involved in some charity work in some form or another. And in the last decade or so, there's been a lot more studies coming out to prove that being altruistic and helping other people has a massive positive effect on our mental well-being. Massively, it helps us. It makes us feel good. Like we can even give examples of like when we've helped people with their shopping, or we even maybe helped someone cross the road. Any small thing we've done, even given our seat up for an elderly person or someone that's unwell, that makes us feel good. And we do that all the time. Like literally, MK is built on helping other people. So that alone is one thing that MK does to help people feel good, or just build their mental health positively. The other things it does is, every event that we have, every event that Qadam Ahmadiyya has is a form of social gathering. And as we mentioned before, we are cohabitants. We live to be with other people, to communicate with other people. And whenever we have these events, what we're doing, we're mingling with other people, we're talking, we're laughing. I see people maybe 2-3 times a year, either Jalsa, Ijtima, or whatever event it is. But every time we meet, it's like we've known each other our whole life, and we meet every day. It's pure love and it's enjoyment. That's another way that MK helps build a positive mental health. And just we have our sports events. There's so many things that Qadam Ahmadiyya does, which, like I said, I think the underlying benefits of it go over our head. And I've mentioned only a few examples, but if we actually truly deep it and understand it, we see that we build relationships, we have a laugh, we build spirituality, we pray together as well. All these things help us as individuals, help us grow, and just makes us better, well-rounded individuals.
Even during COVID, you've seen like the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. The number of notifications I got on my phone for there's a Tabligh lecture here, Ta'aleem lecture here, there's this event going on, join via this, my local events, zoom in on this. So even during, like, it's the whole community thing, where having other people that you interact with, having events and things that you do, particularly with the same underlying purpose of increasing spirituality, helps each other's mental well-being and builds your resilience. And we start at a young age. It's not just Khudam al-Ahmadiyya, it's Atfal al-Ahmadiyya. So from that age, we're engaged in this. So there's a lot more we can do, and we should be doing as we integrate in the system. But there's a lot that's already happening, and we probably, like you said, goes over our head.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing is, I think we might have mentioned it before, is our physical well-being. And MK is big on physical well-being. Even Khalifa Rabi, before he became Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, he wrote a book, Steps to Exercise, on how to better ourselves physically. And Hazrat Masih has also written a lot about it in Philosophy, Teaching, and Islam, about how our physical well-being massively impacts our mental well-being, and vice versa as well. And MK does a lot for that. We have our Fajr Fit sessions. So yeah, generally, I think Qadam Ahmadiyya do so much to help us, do better physically and mentally.
Guys, they can edit this. How long are you going to be? I've got meetings. I've got another 12 meetings.
No, just I literally just going to end it, wrapping it up. So I just think that we've gone through this mental resilience. You know, we've talked about challenges, we've talked about how we can communicate with others, and we've talked about mental resilience. I think let's have some last words that people want to say. So I guess we start with Sabba. Do you want to start first, and then we can go Sabba, Mo, and then the Dr. Hash. We can end it with you. Just last words about your views on mental health and discussion.
You know what? I think I'm going to end it on the verse of Holy Quran, because I think that's what's helped me get through a lot of times, and that is that verse of La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wusaha, that Allah Ta'ala does not burden any soul beyond its capacity. And for me, that encompasses everything. That you have the strength to deal with everything, and just might make you have some really depressing and negative thoughts, but at the end of the day, you have the strength to deal with that.
Okay, Mo.
I want to make headphones off because I can't really talk when I'm listening to myself. So you know, with mental health, we know it's a big topic, right? I think the main thing that comes down to is being able to identify when you're struggling or when you have a problem, or even when someone else is struggling or having a problem. If we let it slide, we don't know whether that individual that we've identified could potentially go on to try and take their own life. Or even with ourselves, if we have a problem, we need to recognize what the problem is. And we need to understand like the deeper issue of it. So wherever you're feeling down, wherever you see someone else possibly feeling down, try and tackle it ASAP, because we don't want it to foster and then build into something that could brew into something more dangerous.
Over to you.
So I would second what Mo said about recognizing when you're going through something. But I suppose my point that I want to make is to those people who are suffering with something. So particularly going through something and I've had it for a while, I've tried different things, whether it's depression, anxiety, addiction, whatever it is. Sabah mentioned, so there's one verse in the Holy Quran which got to me when I read it, and it was, there is ease after hardship. Surely there is ease after hardship. So whatever's going on, so for example, we do a lot of surgeries and things to people. We operate on people, and they go through day one and they'll struggle like mad. But then eventually, day by day, they get better because the body just gets used to it. In the same way, any mental trauma that you go through, eventually your body, it's amazing, it adapts to it, whether it's physical or mental illness. So just got to bear that in mind, and then look for other ways to sort of strengthen yourself and get yourself out of that mess, and then try and get yourself back on your feet. There's a lot of things in the Jamaat, a lot of resources, particularly for the youth. So you shouldn't feel like you're alone. There's a lot of avenues, whether it's AMSA, Ahmadiyya Muslim Students Association, Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association, the women's have their organization. There's various, everybody is very open. So if you come to anybody, and we've got people like Sabah engaging with the youth on Instagram, which is so important, because at my time, I didn't have that. At our time, we didn't have that social media aspect, that that connectivity aspect. So the fact that you have these kind of resources, you should utilize them. It's just about taking that first step. There's one kid who I won't say his name, but he messaged me one time, and I was so surprised. And it was literally just for advice. And he's quite a bit younger than me, but it was just for advice. He was struggling, and I felt at that point that we can actually help, and we should be helping. So it's just something to encourage, and those people who are suffering, again, just be patient and take your time, and things do get better, inshallah.
Jazakallah for that, and appreciate all you guys joining us for this talk.
What, you got no last words?
I'm not going to say any last words, man. I can't outdo the doctor. That was quality. I haven't got anything to say on that. No, Jazakallah for you guys coming on, and hopefully guys,
Jazakallah.
I'm gonna quit medicine, man. But
I might do medicine.
You got to treat me before you quit, bro.
No, it was good, and hopefully people find it useful as well.